Hey, welcome back to the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Hope you guys are good. Hope you recovered from all the ice last week. So we're back live with our program, with our class. And tonight we have Kristi Cooper. She is with the McNair Foundation. And so we're going to talk a little bit. Thanks, Kristi, for being here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Online. Hello in your house or car.
They're all busy at work on their computer. So I want to spend the next hour just sort of talking to you about you and about philanthropy and fundraising. But I want to start, if you're writing a book on fundraising, Kristi, what are some of the chapters that are so important for you? And I know you've taken notes, and I want you to be able to look at your notes.
Refer to my notes because I haven't written a book, but I've always said that I should write a book because the experiences in this career, sometimes you just think about it and you said, you can't make this stuff up. So I would have a chapter on the funny stories of meeting people.
Yeah.
And, what hoops I've jumped through or, where a donor kind of took me to, down the journey. So there's just tons of funny stories that I think have been enriching and built some great donor relationships. Probably the art of listening would be a chapter because listening is so important in the relationship building and to hear about the donor's needs and probably staying power. There's a real challenge in the nonprofit field of having talent that stays long enough that can actually get some momentum to do some good work and see the results of that. And I've always thought it's almost a real disservice to donors how frequently there's transition in nonprofits. And
that's sort of a whole issue that we could talk about, isn't it?
I know. And I've, done some presentations on that topic and tried to mentor young people to talk to them about this because it's really creating some challenges in the profession. And, the reputation of this field is in jeopardy. So I'd have a staying power. And then I would probably have a chapter called Gut Check.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I think that anytime you're in a situation and you're not feeling good about the path that you're taking a meeting or a conversation with a donor, if you had planned to ask that donor for a gift, I think if at any point you don't feel like it's the right time, you got to have a gut check with yourself and pull back. There's something that's leading you to that point.
And that's so good, isn't it?
Well, you got to be real with yourself, and if you're not feeling good about it, it's not going to be a good experience for that
Especially
donor.
once you're a professional and you sort of know these things, right? It's different when you're brand new, when you don't want to ask anyone.
And you're expected to ask everyone, and you just put it out there. But at any time, if it doesn't feel right to you, there's probably a reason. And going back to the listening, you might sense what that reason is if you're being a good active listener. And I think just also having a gut check of what's right to do and really keeping integrity and honesty in check with all of that. That's really important to developing relationships that can withstand the good and bad sometimes that might come. You might have a great relationship with the donor, but something might happen that is challenging. And I think, keeping in check that you've got to always act with integrity and honesty and high ethics. I'd probably have a chapter called Good Gifts Gone Bad because
stories?
Good gifts have great intentions and sometimes they don't end up so well. Sometimes you have to give a gift back and that's the reality of it. You can't honor the donor's wishes. Something happens and a fractured relationship happens with an organization. And so I've watched good gifts gone bad many occasions, and you hated those gifts to happen that way, but it's just part of the business after a while. And then I'd probably have one that was titled Stewardship is Not Solicitation.
Talk a little bit about that.
I think sometimes people forget that stewardship is about thanking and recognizing a donor, and but instead it ends up asking for a new gift, and I think there should really be a clear boundary with that. If
plenty of time for thank yous before you ask for another gift.
There's plenty of time, and you can never say thank you enough times. Right. Eventually, and good stewardship would likely lead to another gift.
Of course.
But if you rush it, I was just, in the past few months with an organization, and the foundation had funded a program, and it was the first time that we were going out to see the program in action. And it was a nice visit. I think we felt good, and the check was barely dry.
Yeah.
It had just been cashed, and on the way out the door, they wanted to talk about a new gift, and I just felt like, let's live in the moment of the stewardship. Let's feel good about.
What do you do when that happens? How do you react to them when?
Well, I said, I'm not sure that now's the right time to have that discussion, and we can talk in the office. And we did have a follow-up meeting, and I said, I think we need to have a little bit more time before we make a new gift.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Wow. This is one of the first classes of the semester. These are people that are, for some of them, they're just learning about development. When you're brand new at development, when you're brand new at fundraising, it seems terrifying, right? I have to ask for gifts. But within the profession, we talk about this, it's not about asking, right? It's talk about why it's not asking and how it's really about that relationship.
It is, and no one's going to say yes to someone that they don't know, that they don't trust, and people don't give to people necessarily. They give to a mission and an organization, but they need to feel good about the people that are representing that organization and have confidence in the leadership that's going to be entrusted to spend, those funds. So while, maybe there's pressure to always be asking for the next gift, I really think that key is the relationship building, and everybody will say that. You have pressures from organizations. There's budgets to be met, and then I think that that's a whole different conversation. Again, we could have a session on that about kind of the relationship with budget planning and strategy, and then having the funds raised to support that. Sometimes that's misaligned. And you might learn that, you're expected to raise $5 million for this project, and you learn about that after the project's been approved, and everybody's counting on you to pay the salaries or whatever's included that. And I think really including philanthropy and the development staff into the budget planning and the strategic planning is really important. And a donor's not always going to fund everything that an organization needs, and donors don't fund needs, they support a mission. But there are just some things that a donor's not going to be interested in funding, and that's the reality of it. But those are sometimes tough conversations to have with the CFO or the president of an organization, and I have to say, that's not something that a donor is going to be interested in funding. Are there other sources of revenues to cover that? Whereas this scholarship program is really going to have much more appeal. So getting part of the conversation is really quite important to that.
Let's learn a little bit about you, Kristi.
Okay.
You grew up in Houston.
Native.
Yeah. And then graduated from Westfield High School here in Houston.
Here in the Spring School District.
Yeah, and then you went to college. Talk about your college experience for you.
I went to Baylor University in Waco, and I probably didn't have anyone guiding me. I just had a friend that went there, and I thought I should go see her. And a tour, I applied to 2 colleges, and that was the one.
Baylor
and University of North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
There was never any...
2 beautiful campuses.
Yeah, great campuses. Yeah. North Carolina was probably a little cold for me, although Waco gets pretty cold. But, I just thought it was the right size. I didn't have much, no one asked me, how are you going to pay for this? I figured I'd figure that out, and I kind of did. So, but it was a great experience. Met some great friends, met my husband there, so stayed for a master's degree.
And were there seeds planted there, sort of around philanthropy, or did it come much later?
Not really.
Yeah.
Unlike this group of students, there were no classes around nonprofit management or fundraising, and now so many are popping up, which is great. You can actually get certifications and trainings. Now, I had the opportunity to do an internship as part of my graduate studies with a nonprofit, and that nonprofit was Baylor College of Medicine for me. I had this odd master's degree in gerontology. Not too many people have that. But I completed an internship at the Center on Aging and developed some community education programs for them, none of which they had funding for. So they were hungry, and if you would like to do this, we're going to have to raise a little money. So, you know, I started.
That's how you got into it.
That's how I got, you know, no one I knew planned to be a fundraiser. And no one was educated to be one. So it was really by accident. Now, you know, there's so many people that it's very deliberate that this is a career. And it has become a career, and a noble one at that. So I'm so glad to see young people thinking about it, and glad there's guidance.
Take us through your career progression from Baylor. You're at Baylor College of Medicine.
Right.
And from there, sort of your philanthropic career, and how did it go?
So that one internship at Baylor led to, you know, my completion of my master's degree. I finished, and then I actually thought that I wanted to work with aging workers. I wasn't really sold or thought about working, and Baylor College of Medicine, you don't think of it as a nonprofit. It's a school.
Right.
So still I wasn't thinking about nonprofits, but I did a second internship after my second year of grad school, and it was in an HR consulting firm. And I thought I was going to be planning benefits for aging workers, which sounded great. In the end, I did a whole lot of other things. But Baylor came knocking and said, you know, we are thinking about creating a permanent position in community education and relations. Would like to talk to you about it. And so after, you know, that was 3 years later, I had maintained relationships with people that I had worked for. And so they called me back, and that's been kind of the story of most of my jobs. So back to the relationship building. You never know who you're going to be working for, and always putting your best foot forward. So they hired me, and that's where I started dabbling in fundraising, writing annual letter appeals, and there were some fundraising events, and I kind of got a bug for it. In fact, there was marketing was part of the position as well, and I didn't like the marketing as much as the fundraising. So I was ready to kind of spread my wings, and there was a central development office at Baylor, but they weren't hiring. They were just finishing up a campaign, and so I got a job at Rice. And our backgrounds, although we didn't know each other, we almost did, and that was a great experience.
And how long were you at Rice in their development?
For 3 years, and I had a territory that I managed.
And they have a pretty well-oiled fundraising machine there.
There's about 120 people there. And but it was just a lot of cold calling alums, trying to get in front of them to talk about the university. And, you know, I had a travel territory, and it was a lot of self-directed work. No one was telling me who to visit with or what to talk to them about. A lot of just discovery conversations, but real rewarding, and a lot of asking, you know.
And after Rice?
Well, then Baylor called me back and said, you know, we've got an opening now. Would you think about coming back? And I did realize at Rice I missed healthcare. I had no idea. I had a passion for medicine and healthcare, and while I had raised some money at Rice through the bioengineering program, which, you know, has a, you know, somewhat of a focus on medicine, but I really missed healthcare, and I thought, you know, I'll go back. And, you know, so really my career grew at Baylor, and, you know, saw several promotions. And then
were you there all the way up to McNair?
Yeah, I was. And the reason that I got to know the McNairs was they were Baylor's largest donor. And Baylor was the largest grantee for the McNair Foundation, and I had worked closely with Bob McNair. He had been on the board as well as their foundation staff, and I had gotten to know the family. And, you know, we talked about that staying power and having a long life with an institution. I think that they saw that. And, but, you know, in 2010, the vice president left, and the new president was going to be doing a national search, and they named me as the interim vice president. I never saw myself as a vice president type. I really loved the day-to-day donor work, so it wasn't a position I was interested in. And then after a while, he suggested that I applied, and I said, I'm not a candidate. And he said, I think you should take this job.
Wow.
And I said, but I'm not a candidate. You're going to go hire this person externally because I really think that you should apply for this job. And in the end, he said, you really want this job. And I'm like, okay.
So you sort of forced it.
Yeah. And, it was a great experience. I learned so much about myself and just built some great business skills, which I wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
And I do think that my business acumen did help my position with the McNair Foundation now, because it's like running a small business.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to the Twitterverse for some of these tweets. But the McNair Foundation, it would seem to me that it'd be an extraordinary place to work.
It's pretty remarkable. They're great people. And that's one of the
You
things.
guys like toss around the football in the hallways and stuff?
Now I do go to all the home games. So every Sunday, my day looks
McNair
a
is
little bit different.
the owner of the
Houston
Houston
Texans.
Yeah.
I have to plan around the McNairs being out of town for the draft and the
Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and all of those things I have to keep on my calendar. So it is different. And I do have a stadium access pass and a parking, which is a great thing.
Very
to
nice.
get.
Yeah. We need to become better friends.
Yeah, I
think.
know. Yes. So and there's a picture of J.J. Watt, in the office. That's
Have you met
nice.
J.J. Watt?
I saw him on his crutches at the cafeteria.
Oh, okay.
So, but I felt like he was focused on his recovery.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And time will.
I'll get to
Over
know
time,
JJ. So we'll be fast buddies very soon.
And what is the McNair Foundation? What do they like to fund?
So a big focus has been medical research, specifically in the cancer, neurosciences, and diabetes fields, because they've been personally affected by that. And so their largest gift, $100 million, went to Baylor for that purpose. And they've funded other.
That's a nice size gift.
It's not too shabby. So it was fun to be on the receiving end of that. And one day I hope that I'll be on the giving side for a new initiative. They've also had a lot of focus on entrepreneurship in more recent years, and have funded 6 centers for entrepreneurship across the country at universities, trying to encourage students to pursue businesses and create their own businesses. So many of the jobs are created from small businesses in our country, and a real driver of economic growth. So anyway, those are some big focuses. Now, like most high net worth Houstonians, they believe in their city, and so they have a lot of civic programs that they support, the ballet and the theater, and a lot of programs in the neighborhoods, and heavy on education. I recently did some analysis for Mr. McNair, and they've sent about 2,500 people to college.
Wow.
From all walks of life.
That's extraordinary, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and they're funding community centers and schools, and a lot of the 5th Ward and the 3rd Ward and Sunnyside neighborhoods, trying to give those groups better opportunities with education and sustainability.
Give one more question before. Give people an idea, or give the class an idea in terms of if people have a good idea and they think it falls underneath sort of the umbrella of what the McNair Foundation likes to fund, what is the process? And give the ideal process. Is it people meeting with you first, or what happens?
Well, I think, if the foundation has established guidelines, read those.
Yeah.
There are clearly things that they do fund and don't fund.
That's so important,
That's
isn't
so
it? Because you
important.
could go through a lot of work for nothing.
Wasted time. And for me, I really welcome a phone call. Before you spend time preparing a proposal, call me and we can talk about it. I'd just rather you spend your time working with donors that are really going to be the best match for your organization. And I'm not sure if that's everybody welcomes that, but I definitely do. And want to also
But more
coach.
often they like that. that idea.
I think, because
there may be some that say
there's
no,
a huge volume that comes into foundations, and I'd much rather control the volume on the front end than to have to respond to all the proposals that just aren't aligned with the mission and the priorities that we have established. So I think that's important.
How many people submit gifts and how many get gifts? I mean, would you have a rough
idea?
Well,
I probably don't know the number of submissions yet. We're beginning to track some data with that, but we fund about 125 organizations a year, and that may decrease somewhat because we're trying to make some larger, more impactful gifts.
Targeted,
So anyway, but
that seems to be a trend amongst a lot of thinking foundations these days, right? This idea of trying to target and be have bigger impact.
And I'll tell you, the next generation, the younger generation, is even becoming more focused on that. And so I saw it on the end at Baylor, and I'm seeing it with the McNairs as well.
Yeah. Okay. It's to the Twitterverse now, and let's see what some of these people have to say. Okay, here's Denisha Gilbert wants to know, what are some of your business skills that you've used to gain momentum in your fundraising career? Were there any setbacks or any big no's in your approach to getting funding? Talk a little bit about some of that.
There's so many no's. There's
as
many no's as yes.
Don't you?
I would say business-wise, I learned how to read financial statements, budgets, operating summaries, 990s. That's now helpful to me when I see a budget from an organization. It's helpful for me to know their administrative cost, how much they're raising a year, their solvency, their debt ratio. We want our gifts to the foundation to feel confident that they're going to be used in the way that we intend them.
Is that a change, Kristi? I mean, you remember the days when it was all about the personal relationship, but metrics seems to be a much bigger deal now.
It is, and accountability and transparency, and an organization that can manage itself in a fiscally responsible way. And we have unfortunately had to suspend gifts or cancel gifts because the organizations were really struggling with their operations or their finances, and we felt that we were no longer confident that those gifts would be used in the way that they were intended.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's a big
it?
deal. Yeah. And I would say, along with kind of reading financial statements, and that was part of the requirement when I would meet with the board. I was part of the finance committee and informed those financial statements in a lot of ways, and reported to the board on the fundraising, the contributions, and the pledges, and to understand how that fed into the operations of a big organization and how it was impacting. And now I also managed a budget within the philanthropy team at Baylor. It was about $6 million, and learning how to budget in a big organization and managing to that budget was really helpful. And now I have to manage a contributions budget, so it's a little bit easier now, but it's still similar skill sets.
Yeah. My buddy Milton Guadardo wants to know, do you utilize, you're at the McNair Foundation, owner of the Texans, do you utilize professional football players for any marketing or ways to promote McNair or the programs?
Well, I don't, because there's a whole nother foundation, the Houston, Texas Foundations, and that's their purpose, and they really engage the team members and the cheerleaders and Toro, the mascot. Now, there is one of our grantees that, is hopeful that JJ would come out to one of their events, and that may, happen, but mostly the Texans are engaged with the Houston Texans Foundation, which is a separate 501c3.
Yeah. So Lakeisha Ray wants to know, what along your journey to getting to this executive director position at the McNair Foundation, what one thing sort of had the greatest impact on your career?
I think I always tried to put my very best foot forward. Anything that went under my signature or represented the organization that I where I was working, mostly Baylor, I wanted to reflect, the values of that organization and be respected in my role. You just never know who you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
And for me, Bob McNair was on the board. He was observing my interactions with him, his staff, and I think that was important, to always feel like I'm putting my best foot forward when I interact with people.
You never know who's going to be out there
You don't.
watching you, do you?
Yeah. Or you never know who you're going to be working with again. In this nonprofit community, they're back to a lot of movement. There have been many times that I have hired people that worked with me in another capacity, or they were hired and are working along someone that they may have worked with previously. And how you act and conduct yourself follows you forever and really can be a big influence in where you go, or a big stop to where you go.
Leslie Astalia wants to know, when it comes to the McNair Foundation and fundraising, when you meet people, what are the things that strike you first about an organization that makes you think, I want to work with them?
Well, I think that, I look for a level of professionalism, and that's important because I think it speaks to how they run their organization, how they represent themselves, their organization. What's happening on the back end is probably what you see on the front end.
Yeah.
I look for them to be very transparent in our conversations, and to be good listeners. And if I, ask them for a tour of this and I get something else, I feel like maybe they're not a good listener. And if they listened to how the foundation wants them to use the fund and then do something different, I worry about their listening skills sometimes. I think really focusing on quality in the programs that you deliver, the materials that you offer, the reports that you prepare. Get people to proofread what you have written. It just shocks me.
I remember having Linda May, Linda May, who's with the Simmons,
I do.
and her to have talk on and on about the typos that they would run into, and just how does someone expect something when things aren't written well or in typos? And, or when the letter says, I'd like to apply, they're sending it to the McNair, but it says, I'd like to apply for money from the Simmons Foundation.
Yes, there's that. Or the envelope is addressed to me, but inside it's to John Doe. And, there's so many examples. And I mean, even with resumes, it just surprises me how many errors I would find on resumes that were shared with me, and they go straight into the trash from my perspective. But, I'm always looking for a good quality work product that they submit, a good progress report that tells the story, a strong proposal that's compelling. And
one of the things in the class that we do on leadership, we sometimes, you could tell a lot about an organization from leadership, and when I'm asked to join a board, is probably, to me, a lot of it's all about the leadership. How important, and do you guys intentionally think about that when you're thinking?
Most definitely. The McNairs are very much relational people themselves, and they want to know the organization's leader. They also want to know the scholarship students that they support. And, when there are leadership challenges, it can be damaging to the relationship, and that's unfortunate, but they want to trust the leadership and have confidence that they're taking the organization in a positive direction, and nothing's hidden, that we're all very forthcoming in where things are.
I find it's just extraordinary how you could look at an organization, and if they don't have the right leadership, they're not going to be able to get where they need to get, I think.
Right. And truly, we've canceled 2 this year because of some leadership challenges with the organization.
It's
and donors can make choices, so all these gifts are revocable, and so it's part of that consistent stewardship. Even the leader has to play a role in that.
So Jocelyn Garibo wants to know, so many jobs in development. She wants a career in development. So many jobs want experience. What's the best way, from your perspective, to gain experience when you don't have it?
Yeah, I think volunteer experience, you know, whether you're in college and you're chairing the sorority gala, or you're working with community programs in some capacity, and there are kind of advisory and junior advisory boards that you can join. The rodeo in Houston,
Right.
to get involved in one of those rodeo committees, they all have a fundraising focus. I think that can be helpful. And then just realizing sometimes you have to start from the beginning, and that might be coming in as an administrative coordinator and learning the ropes. And you know, I'm an example of an organization willing to invest in me and grow my career. And I came out in a coordinator, you know, making pennies, and I really believe in mentoring young people and giving them the opportunity to learn and watching them grow within an organization. So
and internships. There's so many good internships, and picking the right organization. Speaking of that, when you think of sort of the, you know, we've talked about Rice and Baylor College of Medicine as sort of being well-oiled fundraising machines. What are some of the other ones in town that you think, wow, those might be an interesting?
Well, there's so many, and I'm learning about amazing organizations every day in this new role. I just, you know, living in this city all my life, it's amazing what I don't know. And you know, I walk out of so many of those meetings just wowed, going, gosh, they're doing such great work, and I want to support everyone.
Yeah.
I can't, but so, you know, I even think working for a small organization, sometimes you
get a lot of experience.
You do. You're doing the direct mail campaign, you're doing some marketing, you're gift processing, you're asking donors for money, you're working with volunteers who are chairing your event. I mean, that's great experience to be the jack of all trades of a smaller organization. And then it also gives you the opportunity to find out what you like and don't like. I quickly learned in my first position at the Huffington Center on Aging, I did not like events, didn't want to be the event planner.
Yeah.
I actually didn't love working with volunteers. That can be a real challenge. And so I quickly decided that's not where I'm going to go. So that role at Rice, I was a major gift fundraiser, and I just worked with donors who were making gifts of
You like that individual, the individual
I
relationships.
do. And so that's kind of where I focus. Now, you know, when you become a administrative leader, all of those other functions report up to you. So I was still working with volunteers.
You have to like them all,
and then
right?
you start working with the board, and you have to go back to some of those things that you may not have liked. And maybe I didn't like them because I didn't have as many skills, and my skills have developed over time, and it's a little bit easier.
So Charlotte Garner this is a question that comes up in these classes all the time, the idea about starting a new nonprofit, whether you should start a new nonprofit or not. And her question is, what's more advantageous, an established cause or a brand new cause if she's starting a new nonprofit? And you could weigh on whether you should start a new nonprofit or not.
You know, I think you can sometimes find donors that are willing to be a little bit more risky, and you know, especially if they have a relationship with the new startup. Maybe they're on the board, you know, it's a friend or family member. And they'll kind of help get things jump started. So then it's more appealing for a donor who isn't. We, as the foundation, haven't funded too many startups. Your friend Dave Peterson has created some startups, but Dave has been involved with those and then advises the foundation. So when you have confidence in the person who's starting the nonprofit, I think it's a different deal. So, and I don't have experience starting a nonprofit. I think another resource when people think that they want to start a nonprofit is maybe to talk to most big cities have a community foundation who can be a resource before you go start something new. So, and also there's some duplication in trying to decide what distinguishes your nonprofit from someone else's.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so many times people start a new nonprofit or want to start one and they just say, well, I'm going to do it better, but it's not really a good reason.
I had to decline a letter of inquiry yesterday from someone who, it's a new nonprofit, they haven't raised any money, they haven't made any, their program isn't funded, and we're funding something very similar already. And I just had to say that. I said, we're investing in another organization that's mission is similar.
Jennifer Del Pozo wants to know, what's the best way to initiate sort of that, if you're going to build a relationship and ask for a prospective donor, they may be interested in your mission. How do you initiate that relationship?
Well, I think that there's kind of some cultivation that can happen, and I get invited to anything and everything, and I do have to be a little.
You have to say no a lot.
I have to say no, or I'd be 6 feet wide, and because there's meals associated with everything, and I just, my husband likes me to come home at night, and I could go to 3 events every night, and at lunch and dinner.
Does he like going to events?
He's pretty good with it. Yeah, I give him a hall pass on occasions, but luckily I can feel confident bringing him to events. So, I do like learning about organizations, and so whenever there's an educational program, a speaker, I try to go and kind of be on a little bit of a learning tour. I'm not as interested in going to the fundraising lunches and the fundraising dinners. That's not helping me really get to know the organization. I'd much rather hear from
something that's more mission.
Hear from a participant, go out and tour. I like to see the work in action. And again, I don't have time to tour every organization in town, and have to be selective about that too. But I think it's a great way to engage. Last night I was invited to an art show by an organization, a small organization in Spring Branch. And they had an art show for their high school participants in this program, and I could tour the studio. They had students there that I could talk to. There was no fundraising; it was just get to know us, and I thought it was really nicely done.
Oh, very good. Reagan Morgan wants to know, what advice can you give about staying positive through all the no's that you're going to get?
Oh goodness!
Right?
Know that there's a yes around the corner. You kind of have to have a little hard skin, and if you've done everything right to get to the ask and there's still a no, trying to understand why the no happened, and there's some reason likely. Sometimes it's a no, not now, and that's a good thing. I mean, maybe next year it'll be a yes, or it's no to the $100,000, but a yes to the $50,000, and that's a win too. But I think you have to have a little bit of a hard skin, and I never take it personally. If I've done good work, I knew that I did the very best I can, and there's a reason behind the no. So,
Afshan Malik wants to know. She wants to know about mentors. Mentors for you and you mentoring. Talk a little bit about some of that.
Yeah, I've had great mentors. I'm a big believer in that along every part of my career, and I do think in the nonprofit field it's such a collegial group of people that anybody is willing, and even the National Association of Fundraisers has a mentoring program here locally, and I had a mentor through that group. And then over the course of my career, I've always had a mentor, and sometimes it was a mentor that could teach me something that I didn't know anything about, and I was really seeking to.
Do you ask them, will they be your mentor? Are you pretty explicit about it?
Yeah, and then when I was leading a team, every new person I assigned a mentor. And there was a mentor within the organization. I encouraged them to have mentors outside the organization too, and it's still something that I continue doing. It's rewarding for me, and feel like I can continue to make a positive impact on the field if I can find opportunities to do that. So last night I met with someone that I'm mentoring.
Oh, good.
And I think there's so many people willing, and if anybody needs a mentor, I'm happy to help connect them. So I may get 50 requests, but there's 50 people that would be willing, I'm sure.
Don't you think that's right? I think people really don't mind being mentors. I can't tell you though how many people over the years have said, Dr. Bob, will you be my mentor?
Yeah.
And then I never hear from them again.
Oh, that's a problem. Yeah.
Because I've said yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me. I don't
Yeah.
know. It could be me, I guess. But no, people who we think, maybe I see them one time and then I'm like, well, what happened?
Yeah. And
when I see them again, I always tease them about it.
Yeah, like, are you going to call? I mean, and sometimes it's more formal. I have someone that I have a breakfast. We have a standing breakfast once a month, every third Thursday or whatever it is. Another person, we have a phone call. We call it our virtual coffee.
Oh.
So it's at 7:30 every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then there's some people that will pick up the phone and just call me about something, and I still do that. I now have developed mentors in this new part of my career because I have a lot to learn, and it's to be able to call someone and ask them about an experience and to guide you is really valuable. You can't always read everything in a book.
When you look at the size of the McNair Foundation and you look in Houston, I mean, where does it, it's one of the larger foundations in Houston, right?
It is, and it's a little bit misleading because the McNairs are funding the foundation as they go. So they haven't made a huge cash contribution that will fund the foundation in perpetuity. They do so on an annual basis. And,
so that is a little different, isn't
yeah,
it?
so, if you look at them compared to Houston Endowment or the Brown Foundation, you'll see that their asset size isn't as large. They do give about $20 million away a year just from the foundation, and then they're actually giving a lot personally and as well as from their corporate entities. But the asset size is a little misleading if you on paper.
Yeah, and in terms of gifts per year, in the top 5, top 10, do you know?
Yeah. I mean, they're usually $1 million or more.
Yeah, so that's sizable, right? Yeah. Stacy McKenzie. She liked your idea of she wanted to hear more about giving a gift back. So hypothetically, how does that happen?
Well, sometimes you have to give finance to write a check, which is a hard call to make. So at Baylor, we had to do that. They were supporting a certain research program that ended, or that a faculty member had left. And you can have conversations with
So it's like giving $1 million to a particular program and the program's not happening, you just have to say,
you have to
we need to
say
have the money back.
we're no longer doing that research program. At Baylor,
because what nonprofits will want to do is figure out a way to
repurpose it. And that can happen. In fact, when Baylor was building a new clinic and hospital, and then the economy tanked, the debt market collapsed, for a variety of reasons, that project was put on hold, and we had raised $300 million toward it, and we were a little concerned about, were we going to have to give this money back until we decided what to do with the project? Were we going to, sell the asset, repurpose it for something else, or were we actually going to have a clinic and hospital? And that took a couple of years to figure out. And fortunately, none of the donors asked for their gift to be returned. One donor, we did repurpose it, but it happens.
Yeah, it does. Arby Carter wants to know, when you when a foundation has given a gift, what sort of thank you do you want, and how do you want that what should it look like in an ideal world? So the ABC organization gets a big gift from you guys. How should they be reacting to it?
If it's over $250, you have to do a tax receipt, and that's key. The IRS requires it, so we do want our tax receipts. In
an ideal world, though,
yes,
right?
Yes, and most organizations are doing that. So, I think that if it's a big gift, there should be a call from the CEO or the president of an organization. If it's scholarship recipients, those scholarship recipients writing, a handwritten thank you.
That can't happen enough, can it? Really
it's
nice.
interesting. The McNairs funded scholarships in 2007, and it's ongoing. It's funded probably 25 scholars since then. And I was looking in the file. We never have received any kind of notification of who the scholarship recipients were, a thank you for them. for this
Really?
one college.
Oh, wow.
And but then other colleges, I get maybe 5 thank yous a day from some of them. I mean, they're really good at it, and that's the right thing to do. First of all, it's teaching young people that gratitude, and hopefully some of these scholarship recipients might give back to other future students. And so I think it's an important teaching moment for the students, and just it's expected.
Yeah.
So, you know, the thank you note, you can never say thank you enough. And I don't mind multiple people sending thank you notes, the president, the development officer, whoever it is.
Yeah.
It's nice to be thanked properly.
One question that came up is...
And timely.
Very timely.
Ooh,
yeah.
timely.
Not 3 months later.
Yeah, not so much.
One question came up is, what should we expect to give donors, people who've given money? And this is an interesting thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, we grew up in a world where you think you're going to get something
Yeah.
for something, but that's not really the expectation of a lot of donors.
Yeah, and some donors don't want it. You know,
I
I
would say
really
mostly they don't like it, right?
would prefer that the nonprofits use their charitable dollars to fulfill their mission, not for a gift for me. So I actually stopped. I asked people not to bring me gifts. My first month, you know, I was getting everything from coffee mugs to pad folios, Christmas ornaments, and that's not necessary.
Yeah.
And, you know, what do I do with those things as well? And I'd much rather you use your charitable dollars for, you know, helping the participants of your program. So, and then the IRS does have some rules on the dollar amount that you can spend for a donor to get a benefit in exchange for their gift. So you have to be really careful about that as well.
What do you think, though, when you walk into the offices of a foundation or corporate donor, and, you know, there's these beautiful, you know, Tiffany bowls etched in, you know?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Tiffany bowls.
Yeah.
What I have appreciated is, you know...
I like to give children's art, right?
Yes, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Note cards with the children's art is a great idea. The zoo, you know, gave us a framed portrait. The McNairs love the elephants at the zoo, and so we have a piece of art that is the elephant's paw print. So it's got the paw print and, you know, something about the elephant when
probably
it was born.
Probably not a paw, right? It's probably something else.
It probably is. Maybe the bottom of a coffee cup. Yeah. You know, I don't know. But, you know, that's appropriate, and that's a minimal, you know, cost, I think. And, you know, nothing extravagant.
Yeah. Because we do live in that world, right? Where,
Yeah,
especially if you're not in the fundraising world and you're brand new, you think, well, like for an event, you know, do we have to give all these things? And the fact of the matter is that at a certain level, donors are just giving, right?
Yeah, they're giving, not expecting anything in
Right.
return. And if they're expecting a benefit in return, you know, that's not necessarily a gift. So, you know, meals are another topic, and going off script. But,
That's okay.
you know, I don't need to be wined and dined. You know, don't serve lobster. Today we were out at Rice, and we had a nice salad and, you know, a sandwich tray, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
Again, I'd rather spend the money on other things versus dining with me. And when, you know, people invite me to a lunch, I prefer to pay my own way. And I was in the organization's shoes, and I appreciated when a donor offered to pay.
Right. Exactly. We always do, right?
Yeah,
we always appreciate
exactly.
when the donor wants to pay. It's a nice thing
Yeah,
to
I
do,
won't
right?
fight with them if they're really insistent.
Well, the man-woman thing is an interesting thing too,
It is,
right?
yeah.
Because so many women at foundations, I'll pay, and they're like, okay, you know, that's fine. But, but believe me, but women board members, when they say, can I pay, I always say, absolutely.
I remember I was at a club downtown with a donor couple, and at the end of the day, they slid me the bill, and I was like, well, I'm not a member here, you know, I mean, and I just had to say that. I said, you know, I don't have a membership here. Will they allow me to pay? And of course they would take my credit card just fine. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not good interesting.
Not good interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I've never done that thing.
Yeah.
And I won't now.
Or in the same donor they would choose the most expensive restaurant. And I finally had to tell them, I said, unfortunately, this restaurant, it doesn't really fit the budget of the college. Could we go here? And they were fine. But
yeah, well, that's interesting.
you have to sometimes be forward about it.
Wow. So speaking of restaurants, our final couple questions. Your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Well, I'll driving downtown, it made me think about this. I love Treebeard's, and it may be because Treebeard's is only open at lunch, and I can't eat there very often. And I do like their food, and when I'm here for a meeting, I always get an order for me and my husband, and I call my mother, what do you want from Treebeard's? And it's kind of a special occasion.
It's always sort of good, isn't it, there?
It's good.
It's consistent.
I mean, it's just good, kind of soul cooking, but I like their food, and it's probably special because I can't get it very often.
Yeah. I met the guys who own Treebeard's.
Oh, really?
And I was at a pool party, and I met them, and I couldn't say enough good things.
Tell them to open up a location in the Galleria. That'd be great.
Someplace other than downtown, right? Yeah. Next question. When you look around Houston, is there a place that maybe people don't know about, sort of a secret place it's one of your favorite places?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a favorite place, but I think it's an important place, and is the Holocaust Museum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had been to the D.C. Holocaust Museum, and it's just kind of life-changing once you spend time there, and for a variety of reasons, whether you knew someone who suffered through the Holocaust, or I did not, but
what's the name of the woman who's the director there? Zuniga?
Yeah, Kelly Zuniga.
Kelly,
yeah, who I used to work with at one point in my life. I, for the longest time growing up in Houston, didn't know about the Holocaust Museum, and then I learned that there was one, and I kept saying, I need to go visit. And it's, when you live in Houston, you don't make a point to be a tourist. So I had to say, my next day off, I'm going to go to the Holocaust Museum. And so I did, and I was really impressed. And it really isn't just about the Holocaust. It's about genocide in Sudan, and it was just really impressive. And they're building a great new building, so it'll probably be even better, and they're in a temporary location right now, so you might wait a couple of years before you go. But I think it's really important for all of us to know that these things have happened, and you'll leave feeling some feelings that you
They have a nice
done.
group of supporters in terms of, and people that they sort of steward.
Yeah.
That some of the older ones, I mean, we're
Some
losing
of the
a lot.
some of the Holocaust survivors are volunteering, and they'll be there, on a daily basis to talk about their experience. And it'll come a day where we don't have that, but I think that they're chronicling a lot of that in their archives and with recordings and such. But it's an amazing place, and we should all really be aware of the things that go on outside of our country and be grateful for where we are.
And then our final question: when they make the Kristi Cooper life story in Hollywood, who's going to play you? Which Hollywood star should be playing you?
Gosh, I'm not sure I can answer that. I really am not a big movie buff and don't know stars very well. So I'm a pretty simple person, and probably a lot of people could cover me. I'm not real complex, and I'm not a character.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to act very.
You're going to have to think about this
I
and
will.
send me a note, and I can announce it to the class.
Okay, I'll work on that one.
Kristi, thank you so much for the
fun.
work that you're doing in the community, and thanks so much for being a part of this class.
Well, thank you. I look forward to a whole new generation of nonprofit leaders.
I know,
It'll
right?
Be great
It's
for our city and
wonderful.
beyond.
So that's it for this hour. Thank you for being here at the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Keep up the great work. We'll see you next time.